over and I'll try to make more sense. Okie dokie. 4.1b, other systems graphing. What you'll end up doing in this assignment is there's going to be a lot of questions on here, but you really have to understand what the question is asking and how it's going to be phrased. A lot of times they're going to give you an equation and they're going to have an f of x in front of it. There might even be a g of x in front of it, like this. Let me recenter this for you. It's a way for you to know which equation the person who made the worksheet or the person who made the test, which equation they're talking about. If I'm talking about f of x, we're talking about this equation. If I'm talking about g of x, we're talking about this equation. Okay, so that's one way that you're going to have to know these two things apart. There's two other ways that I want you to know these things apart. Here's the first one. X versus f of x. When you see x, we're talking about what is the input. What is the x? What is x? I mean, x is x, right? It's the input. It's what you're plugging in. This f of x, when you see that a lot of times, it means what's the output and what is the y value going to be. So I'll put both of those underneath f of x. She's not here. I'm sorry. Thank you. There's going to be a few more things. When it says x equals 0, it means it's a y-intercept. When x equals 0, it's asking for a y-intercept. Where does it cross the y-axis? When it says f of x equals 0, that is asking for an x-intercept. Let me scoot that up a little bit. When x equals 0, it's asking for a y-intercept. When it's f of x equals 0, it's asking for an x-intercept. I kind of want to show you why, just for you regular Math 1 students and you advanced Math 1 students. Let's look at what that looks like. This is your x-axis. This is your y-axis, and normally I put y there, but since y is the same thing as f of x, we could also put f of x right there. Right? Since we know that f of x and y are the same thing. Now I want you to think about this, and I'm going to just label two numbers here. Okay, I'm going to put 1 and negative 1. And I'm going to put up here 1 and negative 1 as well. Just so I know what's where. If I think about a line, and I'm just going to go like this with this line, okay? I'm going to put a point here. I'm going to call this point A. Put a point here. I'm going to call this point B. And the name of this line, we're going to call f of x. I could ask you for the y-intercept of f of x, and I can ask you for the x-intercept of f of x. This is how this worksheet is going to ask you this question. It's going to say, okay, at what point, that means use a letter, is x equals 0 and f of x equals 0. These are two separate questions. I'll move that up just a little bit. At what point is x equal to 0 and f of x is equal to 0? So just a moment, if you think you know where x is equal to 0, you have two choices. It's either A or it's B. And then where is f of x equal to 0? It's either A or it's B. And I want you to tell the person you're sitting around or next to or around or in front of you or behind you what you think goes where, which letter goes to which one, and how come. Discuss, please.
Okay. So I think for x equals 0, it's A, and then for f of x equals 0 is B, because B is on the x line, and f of x is the x-intercept, and then x equals 0 is the y-intercept, so, and then the A is on the y.
So f of x equals b.
Sorry.
The two answers should be A, B. Show of hands, please tell me how many of you put A, B, or when you said the answers, that's what you came up with. That's 60%, 70% of you got it right. Okay, so let's just go through it. How come? How come? Where does x equal 0? See how x is equal to 0 here? I want to know that has an x 0. That's this whole vertical line. When x equals 0, we want the y-intercept. Where does it cross? So this is where all the x's are 0. Not the y's, where the x's are 0. And that is the letter A. Then when I ask where does f of x equal 0, we're saying where does the y-axis equal 0? So if I'm thinking about these numbers being 0, what has a y value of being 0? An x-intercept is B. Either way, that's how you're going to do it. The questions on this worksheet are not this simple. But if you understand it, you'll be able to do most of the questions. Let me give you an example of what your worksheet is going to have you do. Okay, we'll do the hardest questions first, and then go from there. I need you to draw a nice big graph, really big, bigger than I normally draw, like that. Okay, and when you draw your really big graph, there's going to be two lines. And one of the lines is going to be called f of x. And one of the lines is going to be called g of x. And they're going to put the f of x just next to the line, and they're going to put the g of x just next to that line. And then there's going to be several points along this line that you are going to have to label. So let's label a point, and we'll label this point right here, and I'll call that A. I'll label this next point, which is where this one touches that line, and I'll label that B. Then I'll label this point here, where that one touches that one, and I'm going to label it C. I'm going to label this one D, because I'm trying to keep it nice and simple, and then one over here, which I will label E. A, B, C, D, E, and I could go more, but I'm not going to on that line. I'll zoom in just a little bit more so you can hopefully get a good view of that. Now in g of x, there's going to be other points, and they're not going to start with f. They'll start with some other random letter like j. So I'm going to put a j right here, j. I'm going to put another point right here, okay. D is already marked, so I'll leave that one alone. J, K, L, and then lastly down here I'm going to put M. J, K, L, and M. Notice, instead of us just having 2 points to pick from, like the previous problem, now you have lots of different points to pick from. So, they are going to ask you questions very similar to what I said. And some of the words are going to be really, really complicated. Let me see how they word some things. For function, name the point of the y-intercept where x equals 0. Okay? So sometimes they're going to have a lot of extra words, and I'm just going to like put down this stuff for you so you can focus in on x equals 0. Okay? I want to know for g of x, where does x equal 0? For g of x, where does x equal 0? I'm hoping you know what the answer is. I don't want you to share it with me yet, though. I want you to look at that question, think what letter it is, and then discuss with your partner where you think it is, what letter it is. Go ahead and discuss, please.
Is it where all the X's are?
Are you from Miss Hamilton? Would you take that to her too? Thank you. Or give that to Mr. Morgan if he's there. Thank you.
Oh, I think it'd be K. Point K. Because that point would be like, it would be x, y, it would be 0,
Oh,
yeah, I think it'd be K.
but why isn't it C then?
C is f of x.
Oh, right.
Okay, the correct answer is K. How many of you put K down as your answer? Raise your hand. Ooh, that's almost everybody. That's like 100% of you. Okay, since you know that, I don't even need to explain. Let's go further. G of x equals 0. Where does g of x equal 0? Pick a letter. Let's see if you think about your answer. Don't say it out loud. Don't say it out loud. Let's see if I can hear you audibly say what your answer is. I'll give you 5 more seconds to pick. And now that you've been patiently waiting, please say it out loud.
L.
Thank you, Riley. Well, okay. It's all good. Okay, so now you know that. Let's go and switch it up. F of x equals 0. Don't say it yet, don't say it yet, don't say it yet.
C.
And now where does f of x equal 0?
C.
C.
The correct answer is B.
Oh, it's the x-intercept.
Oh, yeah.
It's the x-intercept.
C is where I see.
Okay. So keep in mind, this is saying where will the y value equal 0? If you forget, you can always go back to these two things. And they will remind you what they are asking for. And it could just be g of x equals 0 as well, just so you're aware. I wanted to know where the f of x was equal to 0. The value of 0 is b. B is the one that has a y value of 0. Okay. Let's try something different. What about f of 0 equals... Okay, what this question is asking you, I know I haven't written this one down yet, but I want you to know. This is saying instead of f of x equals 0, now I want the input, the x is equal to 0. What this means is that the x is 0 and not the y. Your input is 0. This is where x is 0 in the f of x function. And the letter is C.
It's cat.
All right. This is where it gets harder. What you are doing right now are like the medium level problems. And so if those are medium and you understand them, you're going to be good. But I need you to see the harder questions. And here are the harder questions. Where does f of x greater than g of x? Where does, that doesn't even make sense to me. I'm sorry, my English is so bad. Where is f of x greater than g of x? It might be 1 point or it might be several points. Where is f of x greater than g of x? And I don't really want you to well, let's just do this, okay? Where does f of x equal to g of x? I hope you know that question. I'm going to ask a second question before I even ask this one. F of x equals g of x. Where is f of x equal to g of x? Where are they the same? I'm going to put down the letter D. That's where they're the same. When I ask this other question, which says where is f of x greater than g of x, what that means is where is the f of x line on top of the g of x line. So here's what I want you to know. If I draw a line like right here, this is where they are the same. Here's the f of x line. And even though it doesn't have, here's the g of x line. I'm going to put g of x over here. Okay. Okay. I'm going to put my line just like this. Okay. Okay. Where is f of x greater than g of x? Now let me look at this. These points here, you see these points here? Yes. Are they above g of x? Are these points higher up on the y-axis than these points down here? Are these this point here, I guess it's E, over LM, is this point bigger than these points down here? Okay, now let me go over here. This is g of x. I'm going to put the f of x over here, f of x over here, like that. I'm going to cover that up just a little bit. See how the g of x, the j, and the k are bigger than these points that are down here. These points are greater than those points down there. They're on top of. This is greater than those points. So when you look at this, where is f of x greater than g of x? What I'm asking is, what points are higher on f of x than g of x? E is the only answer. I did not put that right there. The correct answer is E. How many of you understood that or knew it was E? Raise your hand. Okay, I do not feel comfortable with 50% of you. Right now, 50% of you understood that. Let's do another one. where is f of x, no, g of x greater than f of x? Where is g of x greater than f of x? I want you to discuss what you think the answers are with the person you're sitting next to. Go ahead. There are two answers. The correct answers are J and K. How many of you had JK as your answer? Raise your hand. Oh,
write them together?
Good. You would put a comma in between them. You would put a comma like J, comma K. And I kid not. I kid you not. Okay, last one. Let's do. Where does f of x? Where is f of x less than g of x? I have one more after that. I'm sorry, two more. This one and one more. Where is f of x less than g of x? What letters? Put down what you think it is. There are three answers, and the three answers are what? Letters, say it out.
A, B, C. No, C, B.
Bless you. A, B, and C. Katie?
Okay, but if it says g of x is bigger than f of x than the one before, then how is it different? Because in that one it's g of x is...
We are basically trying to figure out on g of x, where is g of x greater than f of x? On f of x, where is f of x less than g of x?
Okay, that was your question.
Okay, it's all good. And lastly, what are solutions to g of x? This is my last question for you, and I'm hoping you get it correct. What or where are solutions to g of x? A solution, if you've forgotten, is a point on the line. What are solutions? Or where are the solutions to g of x? J?
K.
K?
L.
Close.
D.
D? And that is the kind of questions that you will have on this worksheet. We'll stop our notes right there.